So I'd like to read a letter I've been drafting to the Seattle Times, if I may.
Yeah,
okay. Oh, please.
All right, so it starts out, Jefferson Park Golf Course, where I play, is for everyone.
Colin, famously an avid golfer.
That's true. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love golf. In fact, I grew up with a golf-themed bathroom in my house. That is
actually true.
That is true. Anyway.
Well, please tell me there was some sort of hole-in-one over the toilet. Or
I don't think there was, but here we go. Here are the results of my own public benefit survey conducted during 80-plus rounds of golf at Seattle's Jefferson Park Golf Course over the past 2-year period.
And 80 rounds of golf in 2 years.
Yeah, 80 rounds of golf. I'm very avid.
Is that
I love
a lot of golf?
I mean, a round.
It's
like
more than zero.
More than one of those in a day.
Is a round a hole?
No,
18.
Well,
18 holes.
Yeah, I mean, some people might
that's a lot.
9.
Right?
It's a fair amount. Depends
Some of us are more aware of golf.
on how fast
this guy golfs.
You're moving.
That's a lot of golf, then. Okay.
That's more than one,
Greg,
round
you don't
of golf
have to call him
every
this
weekend
guy.
of the
He's
year.
sitting right next to
Yeah,
you.
I'm right here. Come on.
You know, Colin.
So, I'm doing something a little unorthodox, and I'm putting bullets in my letter. But so the first bullet is...
do you think if you're going to try to submit that to the Seattle Times, I mean, that's probably not within their style guide, right?
That might be true, but I think what I'm saying will really resonate.
Yeah, for something this important, right, about Jefferson Park.
Okay, I want to hear these bullet
points.
Okay, all right. So my first point is, there's a near perfect blend of races at the facility. It's just, where
do you care to elaborate?
Well, it's where all the circles intersect is right there at Jefferson Park. Everyone is represented. It's the perfect mix.
I love
near perfect.
Oh, that's true.
Well, I love walking into the clubhouse, and the course has its own, calipers right there that you can pull off to measure everybody's skull size to make sure that we're in the perfect blend.
Yeah, there's also paint swatches.
They can put on next to everybody.
Well, yeah. Baker Vance was my caddy, so... So my second point is... There's a near perfect blend of the rich with the not so rich.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
That's a classic golf course thing, right?
Well, the billionaires and the millionaires.
Well, yeah, because it's like Caddyshack. There's the millionaires who golf, and then the poor who serve them.
Yeah.
At the club. Yeah,
so
that's perfect.
Yeah, everyone's mixing and sharing ideas.
Yes, there's a lot of harmony there. So the third point is, there's a near perfect blend of the young and old, male and female.
So, what? I mean,
just your question to the author, Colin. Here,
Colin.
Yes.
Just to try to take this seriously for just a moment.
Yeah.
Do you realize that everything you've just said is utterly relative and it's actually saying nothing? What the fuck is a near perfect blend of races?
I think you
the fuck does that mean?
You add near to give you some cover. Maybe.
Right, but I mean, what is a perfect blend? It sounds like it's probably mostly white people and a few token
It's
ethnics.
just enough not to offend you as a golfer.
That's exactly what they say in the clubhouse too when they pat themselves on the back. It's like,
we
good
have
that we brought in
achieved a near
these
perfect blend.
Ethnics. I'm also going to venture a guess that it's not a near perfect blend of young and old or male and female.
Well,
in that there are no young people.
He doesn't even try to represent that it's some kind of equal blend. Just that it's perfect. That it suits him just fine.
Perfect. Love it.
I will point out rounds of golf.
I will point out that there's an apartment complex that's on the north side of that golf course. That's where I illegally dump all my trash. So I too am very invested in this golf course.
That is, oh man, I would love to dump my trash on a putting green.
That's what I should start doing. Just throw it over the fence.
Wow, this rules.
Yeah, so that was by me in the Seattle Times. Under my pseudonym, my nom de golf, Richard C. Nelson.
Yes, so Richard C. Nelson is in fact Colin. That is now canon.
Awesome, that's horrible.
That
Fuck golf. care if you replace them with anything, as long as people can't golf.
Just turn into a wasteland.
Yeah.
Your tattoos are so deep, they really make me think.
We'll start now. Welcome back to Seattle Sucks, a podcast about hating the city that we love. We're back on the boat, and the boat is awfully full tonight. We have two guests. It's Greg, Brian,
Hello.
Brynn,
Hi.
and Marena, who
Hi.
Greg has called Comrade Cerveza. Is that fair to throw that out there?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks.
It's awesome to have you.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Marena. I met Marena. I was at a bar with my shit lib friends from college, and one of them was moving back to New York, and I was trying to turn him red. And
Red in the face, though, just like angering him with his comments.
Yeah, pretty much. No, everyone gets pretty angry in that group when I hang out with them.
I think it's real bad when I'm around.
Yeah, that's accurate.
It's because you're so incendiary.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's where I think someone that night said, well, what do you think of Kamala Harris? And I just instinctively, way too loud, even for this bar, just said, dog shit! and the faces of people. But anyway, so he was moving back to New York, and so I gave him some plain reading. I brought him
Capital Volume 1, Capital Volume 2, Capital Volume 3.
No. He was not flying to the fucking moon.
By the time you get to the moon, you're still I'm halfway through Volume 1. I'm just learning about colors of yarn.
Exactly. And so, no, I brought him Capitalist Realism, and it was laying out on a table, and Marena, who was working there, came by and was like, oh, hey, I'm going to read this book. And then my friends told her all about this podcast. And she told me about her, also her incendiary Twitter account.
Which is now gone. Rest in peace.
Yeah. Apparently Marina's been banned from Twitter multiple times
Awesome.
for being
Yeah, thank you for your
being
service.
really fucking
That's an
cool.
achievement.
Yeah.
Jail first, Twitter jail first, and then they put me against the wall.
There you go. There you go.
Fuck yeah. So
Not a girl. Damn.
I then picked up Marena with her friends in a Lyft, I don't know, a month and a half ago or something. And then she was telling me about her movie, and I was like, you should come on the podcast, talk about it. So Marena, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you here because you spit fire and you're into some interesting stuff. So tell us about your movie, Girl Beer.
Well, maybe before we get into the movie, though, how's Greg as a driver? Because we have some theories.
We've been in the car with him. Come on
Well, me and my friends were pretty drunk because we had just been watching a hockey game, and we were also very loud. So I
Wait, that's fine. The loudness is fine.
I think that covered up any kind of ability to properly judge Greg's driving.
Oh, you can always
And
judge
yet,
Greg.
here she is! Showed up for what is maybe the creepiest possible scenario. To come on down to Ewing, park adjacent to the burned out building,
By the burned out warehouse.
look out over this janky, dirty marina, and then just be invited into a dude's boat to
that's
wait
why
around
I
for
think-
his friends to show up eventually.
I am here because I knew that might be an uncomfortable thing.
Yeah,
It's like,
totally.
you guys need another lady. That might be a little less uncomfortable.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
3 dudes
Yes,
and a girl
yes,
in a boat.
well-
2 guys and a girl in a pizza place. But,
I was like, it's legit. Seems legit. It's within 15 minutes of my house, so I'll totally go.
Did you text somebody the address or
Just in
something?
case.
Like,
gave
can
her
you
actually
drop your pin?
Just a
Like,
general
I'm here.
area. I was like, I'm over by a rooftop. It's fine.
Yeah, no one could find
Just
you.
a general. It's fine.
Greg's just constantly going, it's over here. No, it's over here. It's constantly. It's down here. It's over here.
I mean, this place is creepy for anyone to show up. I mean, we've had this scenario before.
Oh, yeah. When I guessed it on this show, I just remember being like, I feel like, because also nobody came out for me,
Yeah.
too. So I was just outside the fence, and I was like, I feel like I'm just getting robbed. Like, you just got catfish.
Catfish!
Yeah,
Yeah,
catfish. They're gonna get robbed.
yeah. Cool. Well, we're glad you're all here. Clint, Brynn, it's always good to have you back on the boat.
Oh, well, thank you for letting me
No.
be part of this
Yeah.
and talk. Also, I have a story this morning. So I was listening to the last podcast that you guys had.
Thank God,
And
yes.
I'm getting ready in our back bathroom, and I'm listening to the podcast, and the volume keeps turning down on my phone, and I can't figure out why. So I keep trying to turn it up, and as both you and Brian talk, it turns down again. My phone was turning down the volume because of your loud voices.
I need that
I
in
think it
my
was too
brain.
loud.
I feel attacked.
Auto levels.
Yeah, my phone was like, no, your ears are going to be damaged. Here, let me turn this down. Which,
By the way,
I mean,
this
I
came
live
up.
with this man.
This
so.
came up in a text conversation this morning where other people, our friends, had reported the same phenomenon
Holy
on their
shit.
phones. So apparently me and Greg are so loud that we're like, phones are intervening and be like, no.
Although I don't have much room to talk, I cackle. I'm just as loud. That's how we found each other.
Yeah.
You know,
So-
our
Well,
loud
the
voices.
Viking.
Yeah. We should get back. We should get back to
yes,
this movie.
please.
Let's give
Oh,
this a
God.
long diversion.
Sorry.
It's classic podcast.
Yeah, so Marena, so you are finishing up a documentary
Trying to finish it up.
called Girl Beer.
Yes.
Tell us about Girl Beer.
Girl Beer is a documentary that I did with some friends and comrades down in Los Angeles while I was living there, which basically tries to identify some experiences of women in the craft beer industry, which is the industry that I work in, and pick out some of those really annoying misogynistic things that we run into on the daily. The big one of them being beers being categorized or described as girl beers, quote unquote, because they are seemingly like seen as being weaker because they have a lower ABV, or they have fruit in them, or fruit flavors, or they come in a small glass, or they're pink. Yeah.
so,
Yes.
so everything you just described about
Yeah.
this beer I'm drinking.
So pretty much I picked like a variety of girl beers
yeah,
too.
awesome.
Um,
Loving it.
So, like, what is the girl beer phenomenon? Like, you get a little bit of it in the teaser trailer, right? But what is the...
Yeah.
Like, how does this play out?
I actually, like, started coming around, like, noticing it happening probably in, like, my fourth restaurant that I'd worked at, which is, like, a shame because I probably had, like, heard it a million times before that and completely have just been like, yeah, sure, I totally know what you're talking about. But I was working in San Francisco at this pretty elite craft beer place, and I would notice that tables, my customers at tables would say things to me like, oh, you don't know anything about the beer, do you? Or you haven't had any of these, have you?
Jesus Christ.
And I'm like, wait, what? Like, and it's one thing to like be like, oh, do you know anything about these beers? Like, that's totally valid to ask me
Yeah.
if I know anything about
Sure.
them.
But they don't
Like,
want to sound stupid by
Assuming
assuming
that I
that you
know.
even asking,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fucked up.
that if I
That's
knew
fucked
any of
up.
them, or like I'd standing tableside and trying to take a beer order, and we had some pretty husky guys that worked at the bar, obviously, like the typical like beer like
Beer
persona,
nerds.
yeah, bearded,
Yeah.
big guys, and they would like get up and walk past me and go to the bar and try to like ask the bartender like questions about the beer, or they would
Yeah.
just like not acknowledge me at all and like try to get their like the bartender's attention or something, and like it was just such a joke when they would say it too, like,
Yeah.
oh, you know what I'm talking about, like a girl beer, or they would say just like pour me something, and then you would, and inevitably it would be something that was so threatening to their masculinity that
Oh my
like,
god.
oh my god, and then you just like started to chalk up the instances, like from the subtle to like the really, really overt, and like fast forward like another restaurant and I was like, I'm done with this. I need to make one person just stop saying this. Like, please, just if I can get one person to stop saying this, then I will have done good.
And so, like, so if you were to go to a bar, the quote-unquote girl beer, that would be like if you ordered like a shandy or something like that. Is that the idea?
Right.
And then I really hung up on the idea of like talking to like somebody on waitstaff in like a restaurant and being like, you don't know about the stuff at the restaurant, as if you don't like live in the fucking restaurant.
Yeah.
Like, you know everything about the stuff at the restaurant.
Because we're there all the time.
Yeah,
For like
yeah.
hours and hours and hours.
Yeah, that's why it's always a good idea to like ask the waitstaff about the food, because you know, especially if they're going to be honest with you, like they'll steer you clear. Like I've had the mistake of ordering food at a restaurant and the waiter go like,
Yeah.
I get a little head nod, like no. And I'll like move my finger on the menu until they're like.
Yeah. That's how you know they care about you.
Yeah, no, I love that. Honestly, like I wish I could just go into a restaurant and be like, you do the work. I'm gonna sit in my
Just
seat.
please help me.
Yeah, I need
Hope
help.
I'm
So,
lost.
yeah.
So it sounds like there's two things at work here. Both like certain types not wanting to be emasculated by some fruity beer, which is funny because like the whole craft beer scene and like. I mean, nerds not wanting to be emasculated. That's just something funny about that in general, because, like, you know, no, I mean, just there's nothing particularly masculine about like being excited about some craft beers.
But I suspect that because like craft beer is already a little bit posh, that like that their intent's already a little up, right? Because they're already I don't know. If you're at a bar that only has Budweiser and Bud Light, like, I imagine you're probably, like, a little less on your guard about this than, you know, maybe somebody's at a posh beer place. Although I would like to say...
Your gay panic is less riled.
Yeah, maybe your gay panic's a little higher because you're already, like... At the same time, though, it's like, it should be illegal to ask your bartender about the beers, or, like, to ask beer questions. It's like at the ice cream shop when you want to ask about the flavors. No, just try the fucking flavor. Like, just...
But not all of them.
Yeah, not all of them. Not all of them.
Do not ask for tasters of every single
You order the beer and you
Please, God,
deal
no.
with it afterwards.
Yes.
People
ask for a
stop
goddamn
asking.
flight.
Yeah.
Do not.
Yes, but you do not sample the ice cream
No,
you
no.
order it.
Yeah,
you
you
order
order
it,
the ice
and if
cream.
you don't like it, you don't get that next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
like
you
an
don't
adult.
get samples for your flight, please, dear
No,
God.
beer samples. No, okay. People are always trying to offer me. I'm like,
I don't understand beer sample. No beer just
I
samples.
accidentally,
Please
I'll
stop.
be at a craft beer bar, and I'll be like, I'll try the whatever.
Yeah.
And they be like, oh, you want to try it, like a sample? And they'll start pouring. I'm like, no, just give me that.
Yeah, well, because people do that all the time, and then
people want
like,
a sample,
then
I'm
you
like,
pour
I'm not-
it, and then they're like, "Oh, I just wanted like a little sample," and you're like, "Oh, shit."
Oh,
Yeah.
that is so bizarre.
Oh man, like I don't mind. Like, okay, you know, we're gonna like try to bullseye your flavor palette. Like that's okay. Try this. Maybe you'll like this. But if we're like lining up tasters on the bar, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna do a flight. Like I'm probably gonna like.
And if there's people behind him, doesn't it, like, frustrate you too? Like, as like a
Yeah.
bartender, there's like
Only-
people behind him, and you're like, oh, you are fucking this situation up. Like,
Only if there's like a line. I start to
Yeah.
get line anxiety about maybe like 4 or 5 people deep.
Yeah.
But then like if it is just me and the person's like ordering a bunch of like tasters, then I'm like, it's not me.
So do you feel that, so you've worked in these craft, breweries or whatever, so presumably there's a fair few taps behind you.
Yeah.
Do you feel that maybe because you're a woman that, like, people don't trust or don't ask for your opinion of what to get more because of that? Like, maybe they don't trust that you know what to grab?
Yeah. It is. I'm actually really, really lucky to where I work now here in Seattle. The brewery I'm at is kind of like this awesome little bubble where I don't run into this nearly as often as I have at other places. But yeah, I mean, like, I'm super short. Like, I'm barely, I'm 5'1", like, super small. And I look also very young, which is, like, also very irritating when I'm checking IDs for now, like, 1998 kids. And they're like, oh, yeah, I forgot. And I'm like, you just were able to, like, start drinking. So you should have already had this ready in your hand. So, yeah, it's just, like, this assumption that you don't know because we don't like look the part. But what's crazy is that it's actually there's a level of male beer drinker that it's like is afraid of the effeminate quote unquote like style of beer, but because when you get to another level, the tragedy is that a lot of these like fruity like girly beers quote unquote are like really intense like barrel aged like lambics like from Belgium like really high end, and they come in these little tiny glasses because they've been fermenting or aging for like years and like
their ABV is
very
high
or they're just like super rare, and like you get the more elite like knowledge beer scene of beer drinker, it's everybody, it's all kinds of people, it's guys and girls, and like the guys will have like a little tiny like 3-ounce pour in a tiny delicate glass, and they're just like, this is the best thing ever, like so there's like this level of the cutoff of where this happens right in the middle of and I it's just like I don't know, it's a certain level of intelligence within the craft beer industry, and when people don't really know, I think when they don't have a lot of knowledge about the craft beer industry and they just try to go in there and like throw their masculinity around, I think that's where a lot more of that comes from. But it also comes from women too. Women will also be like, because they get really intimidated, and they'll be like, I don't know, like just give me something girly, and I'm like, no, girl, don't say that. Like,
you should just get the like heaviest stout that you have. So,
my best friend, whenever we go to a bar, I just like pick out the biggest, deepest stout for her, and she's like, I love going places with you. I don't even have to think.
Well, and it is kind of funny because I mean, there's nothing like inherently masculine or feminine about a beer. I mean, it's just a beverage. I mean like it's not like anything.
Yeah, I mean, in beverage wise, historically, the industry of beer was very like it was a woman's work essentially. Like many of the jobs around, like I mean, even this woman I was talking to was even telling me how about like editing in film was like women's work because it was seen like sewing. Essentially, so
because I think like Scorsese has like the female editor that's done like all his work and nobody knows her name, but
but back if you go back farther too,
but this is like a service industry job, which is very typically dominated by women. I mean, a lot of times when you think, or at least I guess in my mind when I think bartender, I think like a female bartender,
right?
You know, but sorry, go on.
No, that's totally it. Like there's like a turn in the gender norms from like the household and you know industry and all that kind of stuff, and then the church came around and women had too much money and were too liberated because they had their own marketable commercial item, and then they were able to sway like influence in their society, and the church was like, we can't have this.
The whole like image of the witch with the cauldron is an image of a single woman doing basically craft beer brewing
doing like
as a cottage industry, you know, and putting a broom out to signal fresh beer, you know.
Well, so I mean, it's this interesting thing, right? Because so we're talking about essentially a service industry that is more. I know it's brewing, but it's like more or less cooking, right?
Yeah.
So there's all these like markers that should say this is a female-dominated space, but it's not, right? Yeah. And it's not in the minds of the customers too, which is strange, right?
Yeah.
Which is this, they don't trust you to know the beers or whatever because a reason your chromosomes don't allow you to taste things. I guess.
I don't know.
Do you have this? Do you get a sense in you know your work on the movie or your thinking previously about like why that is, where that comes from?
Yeah.
Well, they say, and they actually talk about that in this Seattle Stranger article that just came out talking about the craft beer industry here in Washington being sexist. But just the mentality that women are just physically inferior than men. And like brew work is like the malt bags are like typically like 55 pounds, and you have to like carry things and lift things and move things, and full kegs are super heavy. And like that, they're just the idea is that we're just weakly inferior, and then also that we're not smart enough because of course we're never smart enough to be able to do something like that,
to do the rocket science.
Right.
That is
I mean,
beer.
it is very like chemistry based, for sure. But I mean, like the beautiful thing about brewing beer is that you don't necessarily have to use like really pinpointed science. Like you can do it on a very amateur level all the way up to like a very like distinct level.
I'm trying to like pinpoint like it seems like maybe because I'm trying to figure out like what is so masculine about beer, and I think okay, let me float this by you guys. Historically in America, up until the like craft beer brewing like explosion in the last like 20 years, beer was like cheap swill that dumb shitheads drank, right? And in America, the most most masculine thing you can be is like a fat dumb beer-gutted shithead, right? A shit kicker is like the most masculine American figure.
Well, it's the drink of the proletariat, so like the blue-collar worker and all that kind of stuff, and like, you know, the men are coming home from a long day at the yard, and
Well, which and it is kind of funny, like, you know, humble brag, guys. I went to London one time. But it is kind of funny when you go to other countries.
International traveler.
Where it's like in England, right, they drink cider, which feels like very, I thought Strongbow was like a very fancy, like, again, like a very posh drink. And then I went to London and realized that this is just the trash that people like me drink if we were born there. But it is this kind of funny thing of, I think there is this image of like the bar patron being male, but again, like I just can't get past this idea that it shouldn't be so shocking to see women working in the service industry, and also to then be doubly like convinced that they somehow don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And it obviously speaks to some deep male insecurity, right?
Yeah.
Not that men are known for that, but sort of like.
And I mean, it's these subtle kind of like exercises of power, like just like not even necessarily even just for craft beer, but like in the service industry, like dynamic, especially working for tips, which is like I have so many mixed feelings. Like tips are great because you are able, like it's very lucrative in a way, like, and it's under their table and it's on the radar. But that's how this industry will get you, is like, you know, you're a poor like post college kid with a theater degree. And
Should have gotten a useful degree like history.
Right? God damn it. Missed it.
Yeah.
And, you know, the work...
I work at the history factory with me.
Right. I love it. You know, but the workforce is like, hey, kid, you want to make $400 in one night? Like,
yeah.
You know, you're like, how?
Yeah.
And then the next night you make like $25 and you're like, fuck my life.
which is like the working in tips, right? Is you have these good nights where it feels great, and then you come home with like $30. And it's awful, and it's such like a demeaning fucking way to work too. Because you have to like debase yourself in front of your customer.
The things you have to put up, you have to do the dance. Like, I don't know. Everybody here watch Game of Thrones?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. So yes.
Oh, Greg wouldn't come to watch Game of
There's
Thrones.
an anecdote that Tyrion talks about his first wife that his dad paid to like sleep with all the soldiers, and that he's like, oh, I'll give like 10 gold pieces to everyone that she sleeps with, and then Tyrion says that line like, oh, by the end of it, the gold was slipping through her fingers because she had like slept with so many of them. And I was like, there's some nights from the service industry where I'd be like counting like 200, 300. But I would feel like that. I would be like, just feel disgusting. Like, like, that I gave a guy my number for this 20. Like, oh, fuck. Like, like, god damn it. It's just a horrific thing.
I never worked in service industry, but I only bring this up. This is relevant. Hang on.
I'm picturing Greg as like a waiter, too.
Shut the fuck up. No, but it was very similar doing Lyft, whereas, like, you can only really make good money on certain days, and there's only so many of those. And you are reliant on tips, which no one... But the point here is, Marina's one of the only people who ever tipped me, and that is... I'm pretty sure, because I usually talked to my writers, and pretty much the only people who tipped were people who worked in the service industry. That was it. No one else tips.
It's just how we know. We're like, here, take it. You know, like, you need it. We understand.
Yeah, once you've worked with tips, like, there's a sacred code at that point.
We're like stacking our dishes. The server's like, I'm sorry it took so long. And we're like, we're fine. Don't even worry about it. We're going to be your easiest table of the night. You're going to get, like, you know, this much. Don't even worry about it.
People who are mean to like service workers are just the absolute
the worst.
Trash of
the worst.
What I think that gets to some of the point too, maybe where some of the annoying beer nerd shit comes from, is people like middle class people who have like shitty middle manager jobs and all this kind of stuff where they have no real power at work and they just get yelled at all the time, and even the people who work under them probably like make fun of them openly and stuff, and And then they go home and like their kids think they suck, and their dog pisses on their shoes and all that kind of stuff. And they go to these restaurants or bars or whatever, and I think they do like see like this is my servant class now that I can take out all my anger and all this kind of stuff on.
Oh yeah.
And I wonder like to what degree, like specifically as like a woman, like what's the experience of that?
Oh, it's rough. It's like this. I mean, you meet great people, and like I'm definitely not an office person, so I like to like be on my feet and all that kind of stuff, and like talking to people. But goddamn, like it's like this weird kind of like borderline sexual harassment kind of like dance, or you're just getting like thumped on like hardcore. Like these, the worst place was San Francisco. The clientele in San Francisco was probably the worst, and like my last like service industry jobs were like predominantly like tech workers, and then in Los Angeles it was like celebrity wannabe, like was that was the clientele, and then now I'm up here in Seattle and it's like back to like I see the blue badges and I just get like PTSD. But like in San Francisco, like we had these guys that were probably making like a ridiculous amount of money, and like not being able to pronounce charcuterie to me, which I thought that was like ironic thing, like you're gonna like completely demean me as a human being, but you can't pronounce charcuterie, like okay, get back in your fucking Tesla, like get out of here.
But fuck, man.
Let us know how they pronounce it.
Can I get the caricature?
I have a little bit of sympathy for that as like somebody who can't fucking say any words right. I get so embarrassed like at menu items that I'll just point at them.
But you're not putting on any airs. Like we look at you and go, well, "You're a dumb oaf."
Well, exactly. And I will tell you, there are times where I'll see something on a menu that I want to get, but I won't get it because I don't want to say that. I don't want to like go through the disaster of trying to say the words, so I just get something else.
Well, at least you're probably not simultaneously like dehumanizing the person you're trying to take.
Oh no, the shame is all on one side in my.
You don't immediately like shoo me away with a hand wave, like be gone, servant. Like, and then and then snap, come back, I need you.
So means boring.
So I mean, there's like the awful treatment that comes, I think, from people feeling like they're your temporary boss while they're at the table or whatever. And then, of course, because you're a woman, because, you're younger and all this kind of stuff, there's obviously the creepos then. So, what about the creepos?
Oh, the creepos are my favorite.
Speak to the creepos.
Last night we had an event, and it was a 10-year high school reunion.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and like, so it was, I guess 2009 graduates, and I'm like a 2008 graduate, and I'm looking at
So you guys
people.
immediately have something to talk about.
I was like, I remember my class of 2009, they were punks, like, the juniors when I was a senior, like, they always like parked in our parking space, and I'm just like, oh yeah,
Wait, hold on. Let's stop the present for a second. Did you guys have parking space? Like individual parking?
Senior parking.
Wait
well, no, we had like a curb.
You had a
that
senior
was like,
parking?
But
like
still,
curb area.
But you had that curb, the seniors.
But the juniors the juniors would always park there.
But
I can't believe you guys let him get away with that.
We would throw a fit.
We gotta bring back
eggs
that.
in their car.
You need the hazing from Dazed and Confused to come back and set some order back in this world.
It was terrible. Well, yeah, one of these guys from the reunion last night, like they all look like they grew up, and I'm Filipino, so I haven't aged in like fucking 15 years. And I'm, they're like, oh, we're adults, and I'm like checking their IDs, and I want to look at all of them in the eye and be like, I'm older than you. Like, but by the end of it, one guy, he was like, kept coming up, and by the end of the night, he was like, I love you to me, and I'm like, all right, okay, kid. Like,
I always kind of wonder what is
the
what. I always want to kind of step into that mindset, like, what's the end game? Like, has anybody ever screamed "I love you" at their bartender while hammered at 2 a.m. and then that's the. Then they're telling that story to their grandkids.
Exactly. Like, oh my god. Well, it's like the difficult part is if you are in a place where you're working for tips, the dance that you have to do. So you have auto gratuity at some places. Restaurants who don't institute auto gratuity are thieves and you should not work for them because they are completely like they're cutting corners and you are losing like hundreds of dollars.
But it's definitely a way for
Yeah.
your boss to like abuse you further in
Oh,
a way
I-
that displaces that
yeah.
abuse onto the customer.
Yeah,
Right?
like,
you know,
Cheesecake
yeah.
Factory was one of the
Yeah.
first places that I heard that got rid of auto gratuity, and I was like, at Cheesecake Factory, like, are you
Yeah.
fucking kidding me?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Sunday morning, like, baptism after church parties, like, there's
Oh,
no
I can't
fucking
even
way.
imagine.
On like
Yeah.
a menu with 100 things on
Yeah,
it.
there's
Oh,
no
yeah.
fucking way.
Well,
So-
I knew somebody who used to work at IHOP, and they used to talk about how awful, like, specifically IHOP customers were on Sundays, and I can only imagine
Yeah.
that's Cheesecake Factory every day.
Oh my god, yeah.
Like-
So, like, you have a party and you get at a big party, you know, you get 6 people, you're like, fine, cool. You can, like, kind of breathe because it's like, you want another martini? Go for it. Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
auto-graded. Like, I don't
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
fucking
fuck it,
worry
yeah.
about it, you know. But you get, like, a party of, like, 5 people.
oh,
So
on
you
the
can't,
edge, yeah.
you can't auto-grad them. And they're going, and then they start to get drunk. And, like, if one of the guys, one of the worst experiences I had was when I was living in Temecula and I was working at this restaurant. And it was, like, a big party, and this guy, like, they were doing shots. This guy kept putting his arm around me and was, like, telling me,
shit.
like, was, like, trying
Yeah.
to talk me up and was, like, let me get your number. And I'd be like, all right, I'll be back with your drink, you know, trying to avoid it, like, the whole time.
Ugh.
And then we're, like, closing everybody out. And he's like, can I get your number? Can I get your number? And then, like, all of his friends at the table were, like, banging on the table, like, give him your number, do it. Like, even the
Yeah,
women
that's
at the
gonna get
table.
you to do
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
even
yeah.
the women at the
Well,
table.
because
yeah.
it's like a
definitely
sports
want to
game at
know.
this point,
Yeah.
and the drunks have, like,
Right.
the snowballs start to roll, so the drunks
Exactly.
are all on board.
And
because-
it's like a horrible thing too with technology nowadays. Like, if you can't like give a guy a fake number and then like
Right.
it, you know, they're calling it right there and they're
Oh,
like, is this
absolutely.
you?
They're
like,
texting
this is
you.
me right
That is
here.
such. By the way, I've seen
Well,
that's
no,
such a
yeah.
fucking
Yeah.
psycho movie.
Oh,
by the
Yeah,
way.
because they're like,
yeah.
oh, just give him a fake number.
Yeah.
And one of my bartenders actually did give a guy a fake number, and he
Yeah.
came back the next day, walked in the restaurant, pointed at her, was like, you gave me a fake number, you're a fucking cunt. And like right in the middle of service, then walked out. And I was like, girl, you're
Wow.
you're lucky he didn't walk in here with a gun and kill you
Yeah.
for giving you a fake number.
What a fucking cool
Yeah.
country and a cool industry.
So it's
So great
Yeah.
to women.
It is horrible. So this guy, like, they're like, it's like screaming at me to give him a number, and so I'm like, fine. So I gave him my number, and of course I had to give him like a real number.
yeah.
And I pick up everybody's
Oh my
checks,
God.
and his check was $75. He left me $2.
You're shitting me.
Whoa.
Okay, hold on.
He asked for your number.
Did he have the fucking balls to call or text you?
No,
though?
I never heard from him.
Could you
Yeah.
could you imagine
Yeah.
stiffing somebody on a fucking bill and then calling and be like, "Hey, want
Yeah.
some coffee?" Like, what a fucking piece
$2
of
fucking
shit.
dollars.
What a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Man.
And
I cried. I like walked out. I like cried.
And it's
That
totally
is
true.
so-
Like, so having worked for tips before, like those are the ones that are the worst. Like, honestly, nothing is not as bad as like $2 because that's specifically fucking
Yeah.
right. Like that's specifically like
yeah, because we have to pay
there's-
out on that number.
Yeah, and they're sending you a signal with that,
Yeah.
right? Where somebody just stiffs you, I mean, they're an asshole,
Yeah.
but like that's a real dick move.
Yeah.
God, that sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a fucking piece of shit.
Yeah, so those are my horror stories of being a woman in the service industry.
Oh, God.
Well, we all know that, you know, male customers are assholes, but what is it like working with male coworkers? Do they look at you the same?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh.
like as if you don't know anything about beer or know what you're talking about?
No, they're totally
Or-
in it. Like that's always like I think why restaurant solidarity, like service workers, is so strong because like you can hate the fucking restaurant you're at, but like there's a part of you that never really wants to leave because your crew will be so good. And usually after there's like kind of a mass exodus, like you lose to enough people that people will be like, you know, like I guess it's time to go, or they like will branch off and be at same restaurants together, like little pods of people. But the men are usually allies, you know, and I've been really lucky, like in the chain, the career chain in the service industry that I've managed to do for myself. I've gotten out of a lot of those like bigger corporate restaurants where you're not really like close with all your staff, and there are like problematic, you know, you're like, oh, I'm working with so and so tonight, like I hate them, like they're gonna be in the back section, oh well, whatever, you know. So I've been really lucky to have really strong male allies. But yeah, no, they know we pull our weight, like definitely, they're totally about it. They're there to help us like lift shit and stuff.
Yeah,
That's great.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it is true that you know, women don't belong in brewing because we all know that 90% of brewing is just taking full kegs and just pressing them. Like, what was that shit they used to have on ESPN? There was nothing but like steroid and Swedish men like pulling trucks.
my God.
That's how you brew a beer, right? Is
Yeah.
you just repeatedly push a keg over your head over and
Well,
over
but
again.
you have to pull a semi truck before.
Well, yes, while you're
Yeah.
pulling the truck
With your balls.
seats. Yeah, with your balls.
That's more manly than your boss.
Oh man, that's what truck nuts are for.
There you go.
Don't even get
To what degree does the documentary, does Girl Beer get into that, the sexism in the brewing industry?
Well, we just talked to a lot of women. We sent out a call to basically the beer community in Los Angeles, and got some feedback from some women who worked in various parts of the industry, like brewing and writing and selling and marketing and all that kind of stuff. And they talked about their experiences and just what they've run into, and a lot of the stuff is echoed. A lot of the same similar sentiments come around. So not being believed that they can carry something is a big one that people talk about. Like 4 people talked about male customers taking things out of their arms and being like, no, let me carry this for you, I got it.
Good, you should put 10 more things on top of it. While you're getting
Right.
that, take this.
And a lot of
Just
it-
grabbing random stuff off the tables.
I mean,
Some napkin holders.
I'm gonna clock out, you got it, I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna sit here and drink a beer.
First off, never clock out. I'm gonna stay clocked in,
Right.
and then I'm gonna go.
I'm training you. You got it. I promise it's good. But and they're talking. There's a woman that's like, I can double stack a keg if I need to. I unfortunately I'm so I am in that realm where I am too small to do a lot of things in a brewery. But that doesn't count, for not having innovation in order to help me do those things. Just because I can't lift a keg straight up off the ground doesn't mean I can't rig it onto something and then pull it up and develop a system where, with me and my physical capacity, can be able to do the same job as a man can.
Well, this is such a silly requirement. I work at a machine shop, and there is heavy lifting and stuff involved. And it's a mainly male profession, but we have guys that we hire who can't lift stuff.
Yeah.
And you just accept that somebody else will just go do it. I love this idea of there's one thing in this job that happens every once in a while that you can't do, so therefore you can't be in it. That's such a that wouldn't apply in any other scenario, in any other work situation.
Right. If it did, they could only hire big brutes like you. And then...
Exactly. Well, the thing is, when they talk about that, the woman in the street where she talks about the lifting kegs or whatever, it's fuck, most men can't do that. What the fuck are you talking about? That's crazy.
Seriously, I wouldn't. Oh my god, I wouldn't try to lift a keg onto a truck. My knees and back. Fuck that.
Yeah.
Full keg.
That.
If somebody asked me to do that, just look at me like, oh, you're fucking crazy. Even if I could, I would not.
If I can drink it all first, sure.
Yeah.
We'll take some of this weight off.
Exactly.
Actually,
give me 3 friends in about 18 hours, and I'll get that
we
thing up
first
in that
started
truck.
dating.
Yeah.
2 months in, it was my
that's
birthday
right,
party.
yeah. This is
So
a big
I
story.
am part of the small beer community. I had my birthday party at my beer bar.
All right.
And the owner, he's like, hey, are you guys having an after party after this? And I said, well, I guess. And he's like, well, here, take this keg.
Of awful
How are you
cider.
gonna? It was pineapple cider.
Oh, boy.
I
Yeah.
had a guy make me prison wine one time, and it tasted a lot like that.
But he did fucking carry that keg.
Yeah. Like
Put
an
it in his
oath.
car. But check this. I had to sit in the fucking back seat.
Well,
And the keg was in the front seat.
I have a 2-door Honda Civic. How am I going to get the keg in the back seat? This is a real thing. But yeah, I had to carry the keg. It was a real oaf story.
But that's what
carry it
I
up to the
felt. I
student
knew I
apartment.
was in love with you when you
Good.
when
You
you
proved you're
carried
a
that
big, strong
keg for
man.
me.
I
Yeah.
know.
Protector.
And you know what I said after I carried that keg? I've never carried another fucking keg in my life. That shit is heavy.
Seriously, at work, so I'm a carny, as we know, and the carny business is a lot of showing up in one place randomly every day and moving to another place the next day, or sometimes to another place in the middle of the day. And then again, it's a lot of stuff coming on and off trucks, and I'm at that point at my age, and I will not step up onto a truck.
I will not step down from a truck. I try as hard as possible to watch other people load stuff up on trucks. And I'll be like, I'll just try to offer guidance. I'm just like, yeah, I'm not doing that, guys. No, that's what I like to say, guys. Lift with your back, not your knees, and nice swift jerking motions, everybody.
It's real all at once.
Yeah.
Well, all that's just like so dumb, especially for like it's such like dumb macho posturing and stuff too, especially like in a work situation. Cause, we have like hoists and stuff like that at work, and we have these guys who will lift these like 80-pound plates to like put them on their machine. And I'm always like, why the fuck don't you use the hoist? And they're like, oh, I can lift. I was like, that's not the point. That's not what I asked you. I didn't ask, can you lift that? I asked, why would you? Like,
if you start lifting, if you are at work where you are fucking getting paid to sell your fucking labor in your body,
not a lot.
if you are lifting shit that you can lift, you are going to fuck yourself up.
Yeah.
Okay?
It's like, I can work really fast. You know what I'm not going to do? Work really fast. Like, just because you can do something.
I could save my life if I had to by pulling my entire body weight.
Yeah.
But you're not going to catch me lifting 250 fucking pounds of anything at work.
So I think what we're really getting at here is, these are bullshit excuses to keep women out of the workess, right? Because none of these guys are doing any of this shit.
But
right?
luckily, all the stuff we've been talking about, the sexism in the craft beer industry, is all stuff you know about from San Francisco and where you were shooting your documentary in Los Angeles. But up here in woke Seattle,
it never happens.
It would never be like that.
Ever.
Don't you know we're on the elite West Coast?
Yeah.
This is a very
liberal Seattle.
city.
Yeah.
That's basically our beat. So it's just kind of coincidence that we were already planning to have you on, but The Stranger, we've mentioned it briefly, published this piece by Anna Comau. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm sorry. Very sorry. It's called...
We've already established that none of us can pronounce anything on this show.
It's the... she beats around the bush a little in this headline that just says Seattle's beer industry is sexist.
Super veiled.
I wonder what it's about.
But it's we don't need to read it here because it's actually good. We only read bad articles in this podcast. This is someone who's worked in the craft beer industry in Seattle here, and basically details through specific stories, but then generally that, probably like a lot of industries, but in its own special way, the craft beer industry here can be very sexist. And she talks about her career in there, where she's had to leave jobs because of employers or supervisors where she works, or other people she works with, making what is the
escalating advances?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, let me
yes,
read that paragraph she has about the guy who wants to go on walks with her.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was like...
This is
no.
all right. Let's let me find it here. Hold on.
I think it's like the third.
Okay. A few years ago, a brewer who I'm going to call Chad, so like a very handsome man, genetically predisposed to attract women.
We already know right at the bat she's not on Twitter. That name has triggered me.
She is extremely offline, this woman, and God bless her for it. Right, because this guy is...
He's not a Chad.
No, he is not a Chad. He's just Chad. A brewer who I'm going to call Chad started inviting me to take walks on the beach. Often. He confessed he was jealous of my boyfriend, and he gussed that he wished he had met me 20 years sooner. He wasn't bothered by the fact that I worked for him, or that he had a wife and 2 young children, all of whom I'd met and grown to care for. He wasn't halted by our 20-plus year age difference. My only coworker also noticed my boss's bad behavior. Yeah. Anyway. So, and she goes into detail how she had to leave this job because of that, but continues to run into this same Chad in other jobs because of the way the beer industry works, then there are still other Chads who.
The Chads never stop.
The Chads just keep coming and coming.
That's a definitive feature of the Chad. It never stops.
And on top of that, the more serious part, on top of that is also what you've discussed of being sort of walked right past and not really assumed to have any knowledge about beer.
It's like one extreme or the other, usually. And, like, sometimes it's this really weird combination of both, which is, like, also really, like, fucked up, which is something that I ran into in film, too, with, like, men who, like, don't really, like, they're like, oh, you don't know what you're doing as a filmmaker, but, like, I still want to have sex with you, and, like,
It's okay.
Yeah,
You don't know
it's
anything, but I still want to bone you.
like, because, you
There's
know,
no better
if
aphrodisiac
you're,
than telling someone they're bad at their job.
if you're into craft beer and you're a girl, like, you're cool, like, you're a cool girl, and it's like, oh, that means you're not like other girls, which is, like, you know,
you can hang.
Yeah, you're a guy's girl, like, you know, and,
Right.
like, because it's something that they can, like, talk to you about, then it's just it's an automatic in to, like, start conversation, like, even... Like, if I ever had women... Oh, thank you. If I ever had women at my bar, like, by themselves, like, reading, I would watch them like a hawk. I would be like, if any guy tries to slide up next to this girl, I'm about to... Like, get out of here! Shoot!
Shoot, yeah. You mean the water bottle, like the water
Straight
spray
up,
for a
straight-
cat? Yeah.
Can you not see that she is reading?
That pisses me off so much.
Oh, my God.
Like, what are you reading? Well, motherfucker, nothing right now.
Oh, it's a hopscotch of like, oh, what are you reading? Oh, are you reading that for school? Oh, where did you go to school? How old are you? Do you have a boyfriend?
Oh, no, that's immediately
Yeah,
what
that is the
comes to.
hopscotch. That is.
Yeah.
How many questions how many questions does it take to get to the chocolate center of the?
Oh, Tootsie
Yeah,
Roll
yeah.
Pop? Oh,
Boyfriend.
yeah. Oh, it
Yeah.
usually is not that long.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
yeah.
1, 2,
But
Three.
hang on, I'm hung up on something you said that I'm confused about. Are you saying that that men try to abuse their positions or they're just ins to talk to you in the film industry?
The film industry is again, correct me if I'm mistaken, famously egalitarian. Very good towards women.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I think that's what we've
It's a
learned.
safe space.
Once Halle Berry won the Oscar, you know, like it was just over.
Everything
right?
opened up.
Yeah.
Everything opened up. Yeah.
Yeah.
She has been forced to be on Hot Ones now.
oh, I was just thinking of that, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the funny thing about that Stranger piece, when she tells the story about the guy who, like, you know, owned the place where they would go on walks on the beach and all this kind of stuff, it immediately reminded me of this really speaking of Hollywood, this really awful movie that came out maybe like 6 or 7 years ago called Drinking Buddies. That's literally the plot of the movie, except for I guess the script is flipped in that it's Olivia Wilde who inexplicably
And Jake Johnson.
wants to like fuck the bearded fuckhead who like works with her for reasons nobody can understand.
Yeah, that is projection. Like,
Oh,
Right.
definitely.
No, like this is like the male version of like having women in the workplace. And like the real problem with having women in the brewery with me is they just always want to fuck me.
Absolutely. I watched that. And
that
it
movie
was,
is ridiculous.
Like, yeah.
And like, you know, Roger Ebert, like, you know, I'm not gonna say anything bad about Roger Ebert, but I do remember his, you know, R.I.P. I do remember his review of it was only, hey, if Olivia Wilde wants to have sex with you, you should probably do it. I was like, I don't know. I was like, first off, Mr. Ebert, calm down.
No, but I think his point is well taken.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
the plot of this movie is
It's
stupid.
Yeah. It's dumb. But I blame that movie for all sexism in breweries. So there was no problem prior to that film, and I think that no, but I think that is like the male projection of what's gonna happen, right? You know, you bring the ladies in, and it just everything gets all sexed up, you know, and that's the problem, you know.
Yeah, that's why you can't have women in the workplace. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, your head's just not clear because they just all want to bang you and you just
So
keep
distracting.
thinking about it.
The
and-
pheromones,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Their boobies and their butts. I mean,
they attract bears.
they gingerly, yeah.
Well, that's a problem here, obviously.
But
Sharks on the boat.
sharks
Yeah.
are
yeah.
Sharks on the boat. Shark Week.
So yeah, I mean, to what extent were you? Because I think the customer stuff is and maybe people don't feel comfortable saying this about like their work situation, because as we talked about, off mic, the beer industry is like a small world, right? It's a small community where,
Yeah, within each city, it can get pretty small.
Yeah, and which the woman in the stranger brings up is that like she never mentioned that this thing happened with this guy because she didn't want to be thought of as difficult to work with or whatever that might. Yeah, and I'm just curious, like, to what degree did you hear maybe some of those sort of stories, or or people maybe felt uncomfortable saying that on film, maybe
Yeah, there was a girl, like, she was trying to give us examples, but I'd be like, oh, can you give us some more detail? And she'd be like,
yeah.
I don't really want to say.
I want to be all in shadow with a robot voice.
Exactly. So-and-so. It's, we try to be, like, nobody, like, names, it's definitely not going to be, like a Me Too, like, fire, like, this person kind of movement, but, I think that's probably, like, the worst part is because it is so, ubiquitous.
Yeah.
Like, it's just everywhere, and, like, it's so relatable. There were, this guy on Instagram, Worst Beer Blog, who posts a lot of, like, drama in the craft beer community. He posted our trailer, and there was, like, a couple guys in there that was like, that didn't happen, like, that's not real, like, blah, 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 but, like, literally it was, like, girl after girl after girl, like, posting, like, this is exactly right, this is
Oh, absolutely.
Well, imagine wading through all those comments to be like, oh, now for my retort. That's not
White
real.
guy with an opinion here.
Hey, Brew.
They're exactly
That's
the dudes
actually
that
the
are
title
in the
of our
beginning
podcast.
of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is, like,
Just
the
the
absolute
douchiest of-
representation.
yeah.
And the girl, the two people who are in that, well, I work with everybody who's in that, like, little trailer, the guys that are in the bar, like, as the extras, and then, but the woman who plays the guy and then the woman who plays the bartender, I both worked with them in Los Angeles. And the girl who plays the bartender, Rachel, her face when, like, on the reaction, when he's like, oh, that's a girl beer, like, or just the blank stare of, like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I was like, it's on point, it's 100%, like, you are absolutely embodying all of our feelings. So we can't say anything either.
No,
That's the worst part.
no,
It's such an arresting, like, industry to be in. Going back to tipping, like, you can't say anything to people to ensure that they tip you because it's not.
Yeah.
Like, that power dynamic is really fucked up, like, especially with foreigners who,
yeah.
like, it's coming. You're like, well, but you can't, like, say anything to them.
Yeah. Yeah, which I guess, like, in Washington maybe is a hair better because they don't pay waiters' wages.
Right,
They don't have the
yeah.
waiters' salary.
Oh, in Chicago, I was making $4.95 an hour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and in LA,
Yeah.
I believe, I think San Francisco specifically
San Francisco
won't allow,
is
but LA
city.
still allows it, right? So you can still get the $2.25 an hour or whatever, right?
LA,
Yeah.
I was making city minimum wage.
Oh, they have a
yeah.
city minimum wage in
with
LA
tips.
too,
So I was
okay.
making, like, and same thing with San Francisco, so I was making a lot more money there. But
Yeah, which at least gives you, like, a little bit of breathing room, but God, it's still so
Yeah.
small.
Oh,
And,
yeah. It's, the median, like, poverty line in San Francisco is, like, $70,000 a year. So
Yeah,
it's
well,
like,
if you're in the service industry, you're broke.
Exactly.
Well, I think that people maybe who never worked in service don't understand that in a lot of places, like, when I was working service in Texas, you could be paid $2.15 an hour.
Yeah.
And everything was made up by tips.
Right.
And the state law was that if you don't make up to minimum wage in tips, your
Employer has to pay
would
you that.
pay you. Well, guess what? Never,
It never
happens.
happens.
Yeah,
Never.
yeah, so.
No, I got a settlement from my boss in Chicago who totally, like, ran his restaurant he
Yeah.
was a mob, like, his dad was famously, like, tied in with, like, the mob and everything, and, like,
Nice.
I got, like, a back pay check.
So you're saying
took
he's a
him to
Chicago
court?
business
Yeah,
owner.
I got a letter and it was like somebody's taking him to court, like,
Hell
and you're
like
on
a class
this.
action.
Yeah. And it was like, it ended up being 2 years, and it was like, if you want your money, just don't do anything. And I was like, okay.
Cool.
So I got, like, back pay for like
How I
$250.
live my life.
But
Oh,
then
yeah.
we actually got a letter. It was like, okay, it's gonna be settled on, like, he had to pay out overall to, like, spread out over all of us. It was $800,000 in back
Yeah.
wages that he
Yeah.
didn't, like, that he had to pay out.
Hell
And,
yeah.
It came time to pay, and I got a notice saying that it was delayed. He'd asked for an extension because he didn't have it, and I was like, "Oh, Rudy, maybe you shouldn't have bought that fucking yacht." Like, well. Like,
Yeah, and I think that people understand, like, the ubiquity of that happening. There was, I think maybe the SEIU did this report in New York City and found that, I think by their estimate, talking to service workers, that 95% of restaurants in New York City, like, steal wages from their workers
Yeah.
and shit. And I mean,
Yeah.
it really is, like, everyone.
Yeah.
And
that's
Hey.
across all industries too.
Yeah.
Just wage theft.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the big thing with tips is, like, hey, if you don't tip someone, like, you really are, like, taking food off their plate.
Yeah.
But it really is a dick-ass move. But the other part is, yeah, I think more than that, what it does to you as the worker, right? That you have to, like I said, you basically have to like debase yourself
Yeah.
in front of these people.
You're like, oh, ha 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 ha.
Yeah, you're funny when you're not.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
You have to act like a podcast guest.
Damn.
These guys aren't that
This
funny
is
in
the
real
least-
life,
This is
so.
the
Knives
least
cut
Colin
into
has ever had to say on this podcast, and that's, I assume, due to the fact that he is our resident teetotaling psychopath.
I don't. Like the president, I think lofty presidential thoughts.
Colin's Twitter is very much like the
Who
president's
also
Twitter.
loves golf, by the way.
Just like, I think he also is happy that his course has the perfect racial mix.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But yeah.
The perfect racial mix, which is like white people and one black caddy.
Yeah, no Irish specifically.
But
It's
there's-
not racist, it's like old timey.
There's a big old sign that says
I mean-
Nina out front. Like,
The neighborhood is like up and up. I mean, there is the Caroline, the house bar of that neighborhood.
Oh, that's right across from
Oof.
Jefferson Park is one of like the seediest dive bars in Seattle.
One of the
Let's go
first
there.
bars,
It-
first
it-
regular bars that I ever went to when I moved
Yeah,
to
it
Seattle.
does kind of rule, and it has an apartment above it, which is immensely funny to me.
all
But
right.
I used to walk
yeah, that's-
there and
It's dedication to
stumble
your
home.
alcoholism to live in that apartment.
Yep.
So,
Whatever, you guys moved in next door to the bar you met at.
yeah,
Hey,
no,
not on purpose.
but
Okay,
not
all right.
accidental either.
You didn't not do it, Brynn.
It was not a
True.
plus. But
Yeah. Although we
So-
go there less now that we live across the street.
Yeah, it is kind of weird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'll happen. You're like, oh, I'll get there. I'll go there.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can always do it, it feels like you never do it.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
so. But so back to the ladies of brewing.
Were we gonna go somewhere else with this?
Hmm?
Remind, were we gonna go somewhere else with this?
Oh, I don't know. I maybe was gonna ask something about whether either people you talk to have worked in like a women-centric like brewing situation. Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, like I think that might be interesting.
There's actually, there's a lot of movements within craft beer to like highlight women. There, we filmed at an event that happens in Los Angeles, LA Beer Week. They had a women's panel. They had a women brewers night. There is also the famous Pink Boot Society, which is an organization that works within craft beer to help benefit and support women who work in craft beer, like whether brewing or serving or marketing or sales or anything like that. If you work in craft beer, Pink Boots will offer like scholarships and stuff, and like just they work really hard to support and bring the women working in the industry more into the forefront. Every year they do a brew, which is called the Pink Boots Brew. Their give will pick out a blend of hops, and then they'll send that package out to breweries, and then the women on staff will brew that beer with the hops. So then when you sell it, you give back a little bit of the donation of that one.
Yeah. A friend of mine that I went to school with from the 4th grade, she is a quality assurance person for Iron Horse. And yeah, she literally just
blast.
posted a picture of her with pink boots on and brewing. So,
Alright.
Yeah.
Love that Pink Boots. Yeah, they're really like the main like forefront one. But they're like beer drinking groups that are out like in different like communities, cities that I've lived in. There's like we talked to a woman in the documentary who her beer group is called the Inland Empire Brew Witches. So that's like Rancho Cucamonga, Temecula area down in Southern California.
I think we're all aware of Rancho Cucamonga.
Yeah.
Hey, man.
Does
It's fun to
having some of these places, so if you're like a woman who maybe doesn't work in the industry but's into craft beers or whatever, does this sort of like open up a space that's maybe a little better to go to than some like bar full of like guys who look like me and constantly like bench pressing kegs?
There, yeah, definitely. It's more inclusive for sure, and a lot of the main ideas are to kind of bring down that intimidation factor of like. Even like if you're a customer, you don't work with it. Like I can go in and interact with the bartender and be totally fine. And like because I speak the language of the service industry, and also I have an idea of what I'm talking about. But women who don't, when you're starting off at square one and you are interacting with a male bartender, it goes that way across the bar as well, a lot. And especially if it's really really busy, your bartender doesn't really have any time to like take you through things, and will just throw something at you that they just assume. So there are. some people that do like beer education courses for people, for women to kind of come in and learn some basics about beer, learn what they like, and then be able to kind of have a basis of information to go into a bar and feel a little bit more confident. So if a bartender tries to be like, oh, here's like some champagne, and it's like, no, okay, no, I know for a fact that I like sour beers. You know, there unfortunately was an incident with a brewery in Los Angeles, Eagle Rock Brewery. Every month, the owner and head brewer, Ting Su is her name, and a bunch of men's rights activists came after her for her women's beer education.
Wow.
And because it was just like women exclusive, and they sued her.
What a bunch of fucking
she had to settle out of court for it because they fucking went after her. Hardcore. Like, how dare you, you know, like, this is not, like, this is discriminating against us, and, like,
Could you imagine, like, ever caring that much about something?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're not getting laid, so they gotta care about something.
Yeah.
God damn.
I mean, yeah.
Cool guys. Well, I think it was like a similar thing in Austin where they were going to do, like, the women's only showing of Wonder Woman, and then they're like, I'm doing this too, and it's like...
It's discriminating against me and my male rights.
Could you imagine going to court going to court so that you can watch an awful DC movie?
Yeah.
Like
Wonder Woman sucks.
Well, they all suck. All those DC movies are awful, but like, could you imagine going to court to watch just an awful blockbuster?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, come on. This
none of those guys really want to go.
I'd sue to
Well, no, you're right.
They don't want it to, like, exist.
Well, they don't want to go
I'd
to
sue
the
to see
beer
Aquaman,
tasting
which
thing.
ruled.
Yeah, Aquaman is good.
The Aquatic
That's
Male
canon.
was pretty good.
Yeah. That movie was fucking awesome.
He does wear a chain wallet while swimming through the water, which I respect.
In jeans, nonetheless.
But yeah, like, you're right. I mean, they don't want to go. They want to ruin it for the people that are going.
Right.
They want to make it, like, bad.
Just
They want to make it
horrendous.
more inclusive. Right?
Which is the straight. I mean, to make it up to the moment, it's the straight pride parade shit.
Totally.
That's happening in Shock of All Shocks, Boston.
It's the feminazis trying to, like, control the space and control men.
Yeah.
Well, that, like, one person has a thing, and that's just they can't fucking handle it.
You know, 4chan's going nuts. Like,
like... Oh. The internet was a mistake. I think we all agree with that.
Guys, we wouldn't have this podcast, and then what would I be?
a lowly sea captain on the open
But
sea.
he's no longer
All right,
the
when you
captain
put it that
of
way,
this,
sounds pretty. Yeah, I would actually just. Yeah, honestly, this podcast is the only thing keeping me tethered to the dock.
Yeah, this is the only thing holding it back from being a pirate. Like you should be.
Yeah, no, I would just go and sail off into the sunset and
Throw away the oar.
hell yeah. I'd probably just sink, but
Is that the end of Hannibal? Not Hannibal. What's that one where he just takes his boat into the storm? That would be you, just going off into the storm.
I don't know.
Which
what?
one is that?
What's the one that's the guy is the
Dexter?
serial killer? And then the Dexter. He goes off into the...
Spoiler.
That's how
You ruined
everybody.
it, Brian.
That's how that show ends.
What's the statute of limitations on spoilers?
I was gonna say, that show that ended, 10 years ago? That's how that show ends. It also was awful, so...
I have no interest. But.
Yeah, it sucks.
All right. Is
We
there
should-
anything else
Oh,
to
yeah.
cover in this episode?
Is there anything you would want to plug?
Obviously, the movie will
Obviously,
look
gosh.
up your
And
Yeah,
movie
when it
address.
finally, that's the glory of no budget filmmaking, is that it will come out soon, is what you keep saying. But we are close to getting done with it when it does come out.
And the website is...
It's girlbeerdoc.com.
We'll link to it.
And you can follow it on Instagram as girlbeerdoc. But just feminist avenues and, like, supporting any, women beer groups that you come across, and, like, not treating your service workers, especially your female service workers, like crap. I would like to plug that, I guess.
Yeah. Service workers also are not into you, so just all male listeners, which is 100%
We
of our
just have
listeners.
to
I can
smile.
personally vouch for that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so
Yeah,
much
thank
Thank
you.
you.
for coming, Marina.
Yeah,
Thank you
I
for.
enjoyed it. It was
We've
great.
been looking forward to this, having you on, and Brynn, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. At some future soon episode, Brynn will be a featured guest to talk on a
Yay.
specific
Yeah, right.
subject
Hooray.
that she knows a lot about. So that's coming soon. All right.
We had 4 new patrons.
Damn.
Okay, so hold on.
Oh, I think I'm one of them.
I know.
Let me be clear on this too. Are we getting dangerously close to me having to change
We
my
are.
name?
I think we're like 2 patrons away from Brian becoming.
I made a lot of promises.
Wait, no.
Brian
Wait, what?
Detective
Like-
Pikachu Platt.
I actually kind of like that. I would be rolling into that.
I don't have to call you that, do I?
Yes, you do.
No,
In the bedroom?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Hell yeah.
Hint.
So yeah. So what, were you gonna say something, Brian?
Oh no, go. Our
okay.
patrons. Yeah.
Okay, so we will thank our patrons, Mareshka, who I think is that.
That's me, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This
Thank
is
you.
the first time I think that's ever happened. We appreciate it. Brendan McElmeal, Eric K, and Ryan Paul, thank you as well. You're
Thanks,
not,
guys.
Ryan
You're in
Paul,
the boat,
brother
but-
of Logan Paul. Thanks for the money. Guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Uh,
Thank you for
uh,
venturing into the suicide forest. You showed incredible bravery.
hey, isn't Washington like the suicide
It
like?
is.
Yeah,
it
we
is.
got that
Come
shit
up
on
here.
lock.
Not
What are
since
you
they
doing?
put that fence up on the bridge, man.
No,
I know,
it's
we
out in the
did.
peninsula. That's where everyone's.
What about free
from.
speech? What happened to free speech?
Suicide speech.
That's sweet. I can actually get behind that free speech, but
We should say, like, if you want to give us money but don't want your name read aloud, I mean, presumably you can make a fake name on this
On
thing
Patreon,
that,
yeah.
you know, but...
yeah.
Yeah, we're just.
Or you could also send a note.
But
saying,
you
"Please
could
don't make
also,
my
if
name."
for some reason you don't want to even for us to read your fake name, just hit us up on the Patreon or on the Twitter or whatever.
interwebs.
Yeah,
But we do appreciate it.
yeah, we do.
Whether you want credit or not.
And
we appreciate
apparently, there's some movement among our suckers demanding that we get better recording technology. That
it. Gee, I wonder why that would be.
and
I mean, it definitely
That-
wasn't because my phone was turning the volume down
Yeah.
on its own because of something.
honestly, also we could really use a producer. Do we have enough money to pay someone to produce this show?
No.
Well, I don't
That-
think so.
That is
no.
absolutely no.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
But-
someone who's kind of dumb who we can pay not a lot of money.
Well, listeners, if you're dumb and don't want to get paid,
if anyone listening to
but
this
know
wants
about
to produce
producing-
our
If you'd
show,
like to
hit
go
us up seriously.
on walks on the beach with Greg, let us know.
so yes, thank you, patrons. And if one of you is dumb enough to produce this for free, feel
Yeah, we've got a
let
little
us
money.
know. And
we
new
can
mics
talk
are
about
going to
that
come
later.
at some point.
Yeah.
I'm on the new mic train as well.
Cool,
So.
sweet. I'm glad I've converted you,
Yeah.
or our Twitter followers have at least. So thank you again, Marina. It was awesome to have you.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
And thank you, Brynn, for being here,
Oh,
and
yeah.
and for
Of course.
for contributing. We appreciate that. So till next
Mostly
time.
just drinking the beer.
Bye.
That's
Bye,
it.
everybody.
Bye.